Okay, so we covered the big deduction item, which is ordinary necessary business expenses. Let's talk about some of the items that are prohibited from being deducted. So these are things where there's a strict rule that says, hey, you just can't deduct that. And they fall largely into this category called expenses that are contrary to public policy. Now, 50 years ago, this was defined fairly broadly, but thankfully, the judicial system started to crank down the rules about what it meant to be contrary to public policy. And so now it's pretty fairly narrowly defined. So illegal bribes and kickbacks paid to a government. Those are considered contrary to public policy and as a result would be non-tax deductible. Fines and penalties are not deductible. There's also no deduction for a settlement related to a sexual harassment case when a non-disclosure agreement is part of that settlement. So let's say Glenda sues her employer for discrimination and wins $1 million. And Glenda's attorneys take 30%. They were on a contingent basis. She's paid $700,000. However, her tax is on the full amount of the settlement, $1 million. So let's assume that she's in a 35% tax rate. She pays 35% of $1 million, or $350,000, and therefore her take home from that $1 million settlement is actually only $350,000. However, if Glenda can show that this is a business case, then she'd be able to deduct the attorney fee as an ordinary and necessary business expense. So now she'd be taxed on $650,000, right? Because she'd get that deduction to her attorney, and that would increase her take home. So you can see that trying to get something classified as a business expense can make a big difference, as we've discussed on. So expenses that are associated with an illegal activity are generally deductible. So that means that if you're engaged in, gun smuggling, you can generally deduct the expenses associated with your gun smuggling business. That's true for all types of businesses except for those that are associated with the trafficking of controlled substances, which is drugs. So drug dealers cannot deduct their ordinary necessary business expenses. They can deduct their cost of goods sold, because remember, that's part of the definition of gross income. So that puts us in this peculiar place where transportation costs for the trafficking of human sex workers, well, that would be totally deductible. Transportation costs for the trafficking of weed, that's not deductible. And by the way, that applies in spite of the fact that many, many, many states have now authorized the sale of marijuana for both medicinal and recreational purposes. These are federal laws, right? The federal deduction for those costs does not exist. So drug dealers, you get cost of goods sold, and that's where it stops. Political contributions and lobby costs are not deductible. So although Citizens United opened up a Pandora's box in terms of corporate donations for political purposes, those donations are not deductible. Prior to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, you were permitted deductions for local legislation. Those are no longer deductible. The cost to monitor legislation, that is deductible. So, if you subscribe to, Washington, D.C. daily in order to get whatever happened on the Hill that day, that cost would be deductible. And you are deducted what I consider to be a nuisance deduction. So this is in-house expenses that you incur up to $2,000. So let's say that there's a ballot proposal, and you think that might affect your business, and so you hang some signs in your restaurant that say, "Hey, vote yes on 19 because it's good for my business." Well, basically, that would be in-house expenses, right? So you created the poster, you hung it up, right? You didn't go pay a lobbyist or anything. They'll let you deduct that up to $2,000, and I think that's really to be like, look, we don't want to have to audit you and discover that you paid $1,800 to hang some posters in your store. So we'll let you deduct it if it's only up to $2,000. Yeah, let's hold off on 162M. We'll do that next video. Make this one kind of short.